what does a world you want to see without oppression look like to you? A more positive note.
Cat Black said something along the lines of like oppression or like living in a world without oppression would just be like not having like she was talking about like being trans and like how like for her oppression would be like not having things be a big deal. And it's like in some ways like I kind of think like not be a big deal as in like if you're trans or something, um like having it just be okay and not having people being like, whoa, what in the world? And I kind of think like I think like that would be like a truly equal world would be where we get to this point where like when we talk about racism, we can talk about that without people getting really upset all the time. Um, it would just be like us being able to be accepted and like be some sort of norm. It would be like that for everyone and to have like who they are just be normalized. And I think getting to that spot looks really different for like different kinds of minorities. Like like indigenous people, like there's so much land stolen and for black communities are like a lot of black communities are poor and they like we haven't been able to like accrue wealth for hundreds of years and so like there's like so many things that need to be remedied. But I think like the ultimate goal would be able to just be a person and not have your humanity questioned all the fucking time. I think it would just be able to just be and have a society that allowed all these different kinds of people to just be.
Okay, feel that. Would it be like things that like would look different materially, you think, specifically within that world that would make that possible?
I was in like how to get to that.
Or like how the world would look materially different, you know what I mean? Or more of that too. Either one. I mean,
Ooh,
I
that's a
need it.
good question. It's like really hard because like with humans, it's like I think about this a lot. Because humans have to live are gonna pretty much have to live in cities to be sustainable. Like at some point very soon. So it's like, what would that materially look like? It's like I'm not sure. Like like you'd have to I don't even know because I'm also thinking about all these different groups of people. Like indigenous people, we should give them I don't know. Like I kind of think we should just give indigenous people like all of their land back and then let them decide what to do with it. And then yeah, maybe that means I don't yeah. But then it's like also in a futuristic world, let's say that like we would all still like live in the U like if we're living in the US and like everyone still stayed in the US, then like we'd have to figure out how to like have like city planning in order to like have like some sort of like social ecology in order to be happy and like how to do that in a way that's like not ableist and anti-racist and like you know LGBTQ plus friendly and all these things. It's like I don't know. I'm kind of ranting right now because it's like such a big question of like how of like what that kind of world would look like and like how to get there. I kind of just think like starting with like socialist movement would be like the way to start even having a society like that. So I guess to get there would be like every time that capitalism fails, which it absolutely will, and like we're experiencing that right now, is to like try to raise class consciousness and like help guide people towards some sort of actual like tangible movement. So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm being very ranty.
No, no, you're good. You're good. No, I'm picking your brain. I want to see what you about to say. So like that, no, you don't gotta apologize. No reason to apologize. Yeah, no. What do you think about like autonomy and like that concept, like the anarchist type concept?
Yeah, I think autonomy is very important. Um, yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is something that I'm like still like kind of on the fence about. I think autonomy is very important, but I feel like there's like some level of organization that like needs to happen. Because from what I understand, like a lot of anarchists are just like destroy like the government and then um and like people can kind of be free to do a lot of their own things. And I kind of am in this stance of like there needs to be some sort of like representation of people, but that representation of people needs to be very much in the power of people. So I don't know if I'm like understanding that correctly necessarily, but you can correct me if you're like if you hear something wrong.
I mean, so I definitely don't believe at all that anarchy means disorganization. I think that's something that like uh, it's fed to a lot of people by propagandists that like kind of serve capitalism. You know what I mean? It's like the idea. And then there's people who don't do anarchy justice because it's fed that. People will like say they're anarchists, throw an A, put an A on a wall and be like, but they don't even have an analysis. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of things is talking about like how we make decisions. Like it's like always like direct democracy or like a consensus, right? And so when we talk about autonomy, it's like the ability to have what's up, Mohammed? I see you. Is the ability to be able to determine our like local community's destiny, right? So instead of like there would be national government, we'd have like localized types of governance based off what the community wants, right? And then there could be things like federations, for example, like where a bunch of different people come together and different communities come together to make decisions that affect us all and how to make collective decisions that like where it needs to be versus the idea that like we need a government to tell us what we need to do for ourselves, right? And so that we can make those decisions made. And I think there's a points where that was much harder than now, but I think with like with the internet, look, we're across like we're across the country right now, just having a live, you know what I mean? And so I think we're well within the ability to be able to govern ourselves, definitely, and within an autonomous, and still respect autonomous zones, and autonomous ways of living. I think the idea that we have to have someone above us, or like us, like an over umbrella entity, is like just not true and tends to end up serving just a few people. You know what I mean? And versus like put a little bit more work in as collectively as all people, and we live a lot better. And in the end, actually less work, but it's just different work we're putting in. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Okay, so Z. Matthew said, anarchists believe that hierarchies are unjust unless proven otherwise, which I'd 100% agree with. And they're dope too. You should check them out. Z. Matthews, they're also on YouTube. I interviewed them a little while ago. They're dope as fuck. I think y'all might want to connect. Yeah, no. So does that like make sense though, or is that like kind of what you understood it to be, or is that a little different than you thought?
Yeah, like I understand that like anarchists don't want any hierarchies unless they're deemed like necessary. But I also am like, what does that exactly look like? Because yeah, like I guess it depends what kind of anarchist you are too. But like I've heard like the difference between like anarchism and communism like has to do with like I think communists believe like the state is necessary. I guess unless maybe you're an anarcho-communist. So there's a certain I kind of think there might need to be some sort of state, but I feel like that state should have like should be like very like represented by the people. But I'm also not sure. So it's like it's something that I'm still, I guess, thinking of or need to read more on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, most that. I'd say that most anarchists, not all, but the vast majority of anarchists are communists. Like I'm an anarcho, like I wouldn't call myself like I call myself an anarchist. Some of my calls are anarcho-communists, but generally most people are anarcho-communists. Like they might call them an anarcho-syndicalist. They might call them a lot of things. Like the idea of even like labor rights and all that stuff is all like rooted within anarchy, right? So it's not a thing of like I think a lot of like anarchy itself gets a bad rap because people think it's just like this junk, disjuncted, but that's like also what they want people to think. I mean, they want us to think that we're not organized, and they also want people to be unorganized. But I feel like for me, I see just much disorganization too among authoritarians as I think it's like an American people issue. We're not good at being organized. I feel like we're so like given the individualistic mindset, at least in my opinion. I might be tripping, but
Yeah.
Horizontal structures, collectively owned resources. Everyone who uses needs something should have a say on how it's produced and distributed. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's kind of the idea. So I think it's more like, having everybody have that voice that really, because, we represent a democracy, for example, like, you don't have a voice. Nobody has no voice except unless you have hella money. And even if you take like communist, the so-called communist societies, they've never been communist. I'd argue generally because they weren't anarchists. So they end up leading back to capitalism because it's going to go to the people who lead it are going to take more. It's just like, it's just some degree human nature, right? And like maybe there's some people that stay on point, but like over and over again, it's like one out of like 100, and then the one person becomes isolated by the other 99. You know what I mean? They're like, no, we want bigger pie. We were here. But that's just my opinion. It's just kind of split. I don't know if did you ever read into like Zapata or like the Haitian Revolution and like Dessalines and what happened to them ever?
No, I've never read about it.
So you know who Dessalines was for like
No.
the Haitian Revolution? So Dessalines was the second in command of Toussaint Louverture. So after Toussaint died, Dessalines had taken over as like leader kind of. But what ended up happening is he was like the land should be given to the people who work it. And so all the other leaders among the like revolution turned on him and killed him because they didn't want that to happen. But so like that's like one example. I mean, similar things happened to Zapata. I don't know Zapata's story as well. As I know like Dessalines, but similar things happen when they're like it goes to the people because the people are the ones who work the land, are the ones who deserve fruit from the land, and then like nah, which is very like communist perspective, and like also I'd say it's very anarchist perspective to a degree too, because it gives autonomy to people who actually function and like their people are picking the fruits and the vegetables off that land. The land should belong to the people who work that. And I think when we see hierarchies, we see that over and over again. Where people who are like, nah, they're cool with the hierarchy, but like we got to make sure that people are looked out for. They usually get like offed. You know what I mean? Because people want to
Yeah,
bring
I
resources to
agree
them.
with all of that. I think like the
So
thing I think like the disagreement might just be like on if we should have a state or not. And I think that's like the part where I'm not really sure about. Like, should there be a state or should there like be like something else where it's like less hierarchical? I think hierarchies are generally really bad, but it also seems like in the modern world there might need to be some sort of state or something. So I think that's really where the disagreement, or maybe not even disagreement, but like that's where I'm like not sure on. And that might like,
how do you
huh?
how do you define a state for you? How are you defining when you see a state? What does that mean to you?
Like a government, like of sorts, like an doesn't necessarily have to be like democratically elected, but would be ideally democratically elected, and they kind of like run like the rest of the state. And there's like hierarchies in the sense where it's like right now, like when you like vote people in, and then they can like work their way up to like national instead of just like running offices in the state. And so there's like hierarchies where you can like work your way up from like state to national. So that's like generally what I would think of a state as. And so it's like I don't think there should be any hierarchies unless deemed necessary, but like what if you like actually, given the population size, like need a state in like the modern world? But like not a state like the US state because it's extremely oppressive, but like something that like a state that like like let's say that like capitalists are overthrown, and then instead of just like being like okay, like we're gonna like kind of like run everything like by our own like personal like our own personal like rules or what we want, I think you might legitimately like need some sort of state to come in. Like you might need like a socialist state to come in and say like this is like kind of how we need to do things to get to a stable spot, like after like some sort of like capitalist revolt or something. And so like that's why I'm like practically like maybe you would need a state for some point of time after you overthrew capitalism. Like maybe. I don't know. I want to read more theory on it before I'm like, this is what I think. Um, so that's why I'm like, I think that's like the disagreement there.
I don't know. I'm just like wondering, like, why would that be like better than like, for example, sorry about getting a little debatey with you, but why would that be better than like having multiple minds deciding that decision, like as all the different communities? What I guess, how do you think that end up making a better result? I guess is my question.
So let's say that like we live in a world where capitalism is overthrown, and then like, that would happen where people are kicking free. And so like to have like a society that's like running, if you just decided not to put any state in after overthrowing the capitalist state, then someone else will just take over that state. Like there's nothing really to protect the autonomy of everyone because someone else would just come in and reestablish capitalism or something like that. So I feel like there would at least be a period of time where you would need a state to be like, hey, we're a socialist society and we're going to protect the rights of people. Because if you don't have that, I think someone would come in and take control again because that's just like the pattern of what's happened.
Um, well, can I debate you a little bit? Equal that? Is that
Yeah, sure.
okay? So what I argue in retort is that what we see is generally when the state then evolves into become the state, it's the state that takes and becomes capitalist over and over again. Like we can see that with like the Soviet Union, even before they like fell, they were essentially state capitalists. They like the resources. When we talk about China, we talk over and over again these things of the state that are supposed to replace end up becoming the very thing they said they were trying to replace, right? Versus like if we had like a bunch of autonomous communities with like militias and made choices to like protect our own communities, but then also had like a connection network. We had networks, so we could have like a federation. We could have them, or whatever people want to call it. I'm using federation because it's just a common word people use, but like a bunch of different communities that could come together, like by communicating with each other when necessary to defend what they like their freedom that they want, right? So what like I kind of think that's like honestly more in my mind I think it's more likely than trying to like redesign a wheel that keeps rolling the same way every time we try to redesign it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it feels like I feel like it's drastic. It's not what we're used to, at least at this point in history, not since pre-industrialization at least, but it feels like that's what's in my mind that's what's necessary. Because I wasn't always like against either. I was definitely a big C communist at first. Like never was a socialist, but I was a big C communist. So like I kind of like realized, I don't know, for me, it kind of felt like I was realizing that like, okay, but the history says that it's not going to work out and the people are going to become the tyrants. The people who take over are going to be the tyrants over and over again. Because I've never seen it work out, any example of actually working out any other way, you know? Yeah, but
That makes a
I
lot
don't
of sense.
know. But it's just like a long thing because I don't think any of us have really the answers because it hasn't worked out any other way but sucky thus far. So we've all got the wrong answers up to this point. And I think one of the things that honestly I'd be self-critiquing of like my own philosophy, like anarchism, I think had a real problem with coming to a space of being able to have more of those federations type spaces because again, I think this not just I say American society, but I'll say Western society has been plagued with individualism so bad that I think we end up just, ripping each other apart instead of like trying to find ways to find solidarity.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think it's like changes. We got to move one at a time and make internal. What they say, like the only way revolution really comes is if it comes inside yourself first, type thing. I think is that, but that's like I hate that statement, but I also see the like validity in that too. You know what I mean? Because like I hate it because it's like so like cliche, but I think there's some truth to it. But it's also how do we build that collectively at the same time is really a confusing thing in my mind. I don't know. You might have the key to that though. So if you do, throw it
No,
out because I need some help.
like this is like very like strictly an opinion that's like not formed yet. Like I feel really uncomfortable like even really saying my opinion because I need to read more about like such things, you know? It's like I don't like saying what my opinion is on something if it's not formed yet. And that's like something that's like very much an unformed opinion. And I'm open to changing it as new information comes.
Okay. Yeah, no. I mean, and like again, it's all just opinions. Because the answer is probably something that none of us have right now. The answer is probably something that's way different than we're even thinking outside a box that we don't even realize we're in. You know what I mean? To be 100, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I think it's just I don't know. And it also is like, how do we move with the changing circumstances? To be real with you, because the circumstances are changing so fast in a way that we've never had to deal with as a species before. That
Walking through the crease and the cracks of the streets, struggling for some food and a bed to sleep, while trying to cause overthrow. I'm feeling weak, ideology buff overgrown. Thanks for rocking with us. I hope you enjoyed this dope-ass conversation with Professor Flowers. If you want to support Overthrow Media, head over to Teespring and cop some of this fly-ass merch. Or you can become a Patreon over on Patreon.
Link in description.
Speaking of Patreon, shout out to all my supporters that are keeping the lights on right now. And make sure y'all go over and subscribe to Professor Flowers' YouTube channel because you know they lit. Alright. Deuces.